Hey y'all, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going over design system governance best practices, and we are joined by this year's finalists in the governance category for the Design System Awards. You probably already noticed that to your right, there is a chat. There you can kind of say hello, tell us where you're from, and as the webinar progresses, that's also the perfect place to put down any questions that you might have for our panelists. We have a couple of pre-prepared questions that we'll ask over the first few minutes of our webinar, and then we'll start to answer some of the questions that are placed there in chat. So again, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. Before we get too far into the questions and hearing a whole lot about governance best practices, I wanted to let you know that we have Zeros, which is one of the best places to keep the conversation going after this webinar, and also to learn and ask questions about your design system. You'll notice that there is a good block there that says sign up here. If you're not a part of the Zeros community and you want to be a part of it, go ahead and sign up, join us on Slack. I think over 1,000 people are there talking about design systems. Also, if you need assistance, Connie Greasley is here in the chat. You can at her and she can help out with anything that you might need. The age-old question for webinars is, are you recording this? And the answer is absolutely yes. So at the end of this, we'll email over a recording that you can share with your mom, your colleagues, or anybody else that might be tangentially interested in design systems. If you would like some captioning, we really recommend that URL there. Unfortunately, Demio, the webinar platform that we're using today, does not have its own captioning. We have sent in multiple feature requests and we really want them to add it. But in the interim, that is a really, really good solution for live captioning for anybody who might want it or have their experience enhanced by having some captioning. And then last thing, I don't even think I need to say this for this group, but our overall code of conduct is don't be a jerk. So don't think that that will be a problem at all, but we say it. And lastly, we have a couple of upcoming events. If you are a webinar person, you might want to join us on December 12th, where we are hosting the third episode of Beyond the Button around how you can ensure that you build a successful design system. And on December 20th, Amy Hupe is joining us for Design Systems WTF number 7, where she is going to be around to answer any of your design system questions. And Luke will be there as well, who is our lead design advocate at zeroheight. Without further ado, I would love to introduce the panelists that are joining me today. My name is Neff. I am the product marketing manager at zeroheight, and I will pass it over to Henry to tell us a little bit about his role, his company, and their design system.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Henry Daggett, and I'm the design system lead at Societe Generale, which is an investment bank, which is based in France, but I think we're sort of global now, so we're everywhere. And yeah, so we obviously work in the investment space, in like fintech and things like that. And our design system is specifically built for a platform of financial products called SG Markets. And the system itself covers I think it's like 300 or 400 official projects and many, maybe like 1,000 internal projects. So we've got really sort of like broad coverage of products and things like that. And it's everything you can imagine, from obviously like trading applications and then maybe even over to like just task managers and things like that. So things a little bit more light. For me, I've been working in design systems, I think I literally just passed 5 years. So it feels like a little bit of a benchmark. But yeah, that's me. Hello.
And Annalisa?
Good evening, wherever you're located. I'm Annalisa Recio. I'm the VP of UX at a company called Eptura. We focus on, we're a global work tech company. We focus on the management of spaces as well as your employees and assets within your organization, and enabling them by leveraging our software. We actually are sort of a product of multiple acquisitions, clubbing together multiple products. So I feel like that's also something that many of you probably have to experience, is how do I take a bazillion different disparate experiences and design aesthetics and make it look and feel as if it's one product, one suite of software. Throughout my career, I've had lots of experience working for a few Fortune 50 companies, all of which I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to be able to touch a few design systems that many know across the globe. So I've been able to take a lot of that experience and apply it to my current role here at Eptura. And I would say, I've learned a lot about what not to do, which has helped me learn what to do. And I'm hoping that we can share some of that today. It's great meeting everyone.
Amazing. And Catherine?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So my name is Catherine Stolarski. I'm UI Design Director at Schneider Electric. So I've been with the company for 2.5 years. And what is Schneider Electric? So it's the world leader in digital automation and energy management. So we are present over 110 countries. We have a dozen associated brands, and we address many business segments, so like IT, residential industry, utilities, buildings, and for that we have over 200 digital products scattered on many platforms, old and new. And our design system, which is called Quartz, is 5 years old. It has been adopted by over 100 applications, and my role in all of that was to define the new direction, visual direction for interfaces, and in this sense participated in the definition of the foundations of the new version of the design system, the tokens, and the governance model.
And then last but not least, we'll kick it over to Jérôme.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nef. Hi, everyone. I'm Jérôme. I'm design system lead at Doctolib for almost, I would say, 2 years, but I'm a doctor formerly as product designer for more than 4 years. Doctolib is a healthcare company with 2 missions. First mission is to ease access to healthcare to anyone, and second is to facilitate the daily life of practitioners to make them more efficient with their work, and so providing more health to anyone. Our design system is called Oxygen, and we have a team of designers that is around 60 persons and 300 developers, I would say. We have one, I would say, a bit of context about Doctolib. This company is really not a design-led company at first, but it tends to become a more design-led company, so that's a good sign for us. But that means we're struggling with lots of legacy code, a bit of lack of front-end skills from our developers. And so it has a huge impact on our design system and on our work. And currently, the design system team is composed about 6 to 8%, depending if we have some people acting part-time with us. And that's it.
All right, we will start with our first question for the panel. So when you all started to consider your design system governance strategy, what was the most important thing for your team to consider? We'll start with Catherine.
Yeah, so our main challenge was really to maintain consistency and quality at scale. So with the previous version of the design system, we faced a real reduction in quality and stability due to a lot of federated contributions. So there was also a lack of synchronization between design, dev, documentation. So yeah, things were just thrown into the system. So we really wanted to bring consistency with common foundations, but not being constrain a lot of products into one generic interface. So we also wanted to capture actually the specificities and the expertise of the different domains and like give them dedicated spaces so they can put that in common. So, you know, this also allows to kind of have like a very quick contribution, like with a smaller impact, and but still having like a solid common foundation.
Totally, that makes a lot of sense. And Annalisa, I know that you all also have a bit of a process around ensuring that there is consistency in the contributions to the design system. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And you guys can hear me okay, right? Hopefully I'm not cutting out. Okay, excellent. Yeah, I would say one of the most important parts of ensuring consistency, you know, I think it's pretty obvious we're all here because we know that documentation is important. Otherwise, you know, that's what zeroheight does really well. But it's not just about documenting, you know, your specs and your accessibility requirements and, you know, all the different things that are necessary for people to understand how to use a design system. But I would say one of the most important parts is also documenting the process and then taking that process, then promoting it up and down the chain. So it's not just about, you know, promotion of a process specifically to people leveraging it, but it's also making sure that you get buy-in, that you get support, and you get the necessary airtime with your engineering, your product and your design leadership team, as well as people outside of that. The really great thing about our design system is that everybody in the organization even knows what it is. There's people in finance, people in HR. Like, we want people to feel a certain sense of pride about leveraging a design system to create consistency across the organization, the products.
Totally. And for folks who might not have heard that, it sounds like Annalisa has done a really good job of sort of not just documenting the design system itself, but also documenting the process of how folks can contribute. And it sounds like everybody sort of knows about the existence of the design system and how they might be able to be a part of it, which is allowed for more people to contribute and do it in the right way. I suppose I'll kick it over to Henry, who also has a couple of ideas about how you might be able to create a governance strategy.
Yeah, so I mean, strategy-wise, ours was very much about sustainability. We had like a huge number of products, and obviously, I think everyone struggles with this, is like not having enough resources. I feel like when you're starting out, it's always like, oh, we don't have enough resources. And I think what I've learned now is that when you're constantly talking about not having enough resources, your real problem is that you're being too ambitious. So I think scaling back and just being realistic with what you've actually got is really important. And I think that was really important for us because it's hard, you know, like especially when like designers and developers start like bottlenecking each other. So let's say like you've gone crazy with a design and you want to get that out there, but your developers obviously have a roadmap too, and it's like they can't do everything, and you can't just hire, well maybe you can, but you can't just hire new developers to get exactly what you want. And so then you have sort of like this desync. So I think being very realistic with each other and this sort of sustainable approach is really important.
Totally. And it's interesting that you sort of mentioned hiring people in order to increase the capacity of the team, because Jérôme, I think that that's something that you do have experience with, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I really recognize myself in anything that Catherine or Annalisa or Henry said, honestly, because I was really at the start of the design system, and we wanted to maintain consistency at scale and quality at scale. But we were only two at first, one developer, one designer. And so we, as Annalisa said, we tried to get buy-in and to scale the team. Thing is, when you are only 2% against 300 developers, you really need to find a way. You can't just answer every question on Slack asking, can I use this component? So you really need to focus on that. But the more you're doing your evangelization and explaining how to providing documentation, stuff like that, the more you are receiving new requests. And this is where is the trap, honestly. So you really need to get buy-in from the top management to have more people in your team. And you also need to provide the good documentation and create good relationships with key people in the team. And this is how we manage to scale the team and then be more powerful, I would say.
Amazing. Lots of different perspectives about how you all have done that. Before we move on, it sounds like, I'm not sure if that was Catherine or Annalisa that might have had something to add, or I could be mistaken.
I think about how we were able to create sort of widespread knowledge across the organization. I'll touch on this, I think, in a couple questions, but essentially we run our product or our design system as if it's a product. You know, so when you do that, if you think about how you guys create a product, right, you have sort of outbound communication, you teach people how to use things, you know, you make sure that you have the dedicated resources to do the proper things, such as a content strategist, a researcher, but it's all about promotion. So we actually host how-to sessions and we send it out to the entire organization, regardless of what department you're in. Who knows? Maybe there's somebody in finance that wants to learn how to use a design system, but we invite everybody to the table, as well as send out a monthly newsletter to the entire organization. And what that does, it allows the rest of the organization to see how we're putting things together from a product perspective, and it just draws a lot of buzz. You know, we create a lot of excitement. We talk about how cool our design system is, and people just get kind of rally behind the idea of it.
Totally. And I love the idea of sort of treating your design system as a product and thinking about how people use it, and making it easy for folks to be able to access that information and use it correctly. I suppose this sort of leads into our second question around what is it about your strategy or approach to governance has been unique from what you've seen out there? I think a lot of times we like to break design systems down into, oh, this design system uses a federated model or this one uses a centralized model. But in reality, I think governance is as unique as the company that is defining it. So I would be really keen to sort of hear how you all have been able to create that. And we'll start with Catherine.
Okay, so I think what is kind of wasn't expected in our approach is that in the way we build our governance model wasn't actually mirroring the company organization. So if we had done that, we would have ended up with a lot of silos and possibly people not really talking to each other. So we really wanted to take it this way. So thinking how many elements we can put in common, and where it breaks, we just divide it. So this is how we have a core of very simple generic components, and then we have on top of that we have two domains, applications and website, because just when we think of navigation, this breaks into two different groups. And then yet inside of those domains, there might be difference in patterns, depending on the specificities of each domain. And so yeah, this is how we thought that. And it's also a way to invite teams that are not usually working together to actually sit down and try to mutualize the knowledge.
Yeah, I love the idea of trying to get folks who might not usually interact to interact around the design system. And if I'm not mistaken, Henry, you all have a pretty cool council that is designed to do something similar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by saying that when it comes to like governance and team structures, I don't think there's a single setup that like Nathan Curtis hasn't written about. So if you want to go and have a little read of his articles, you can find out like everything that you want to know there. But yeah, for us, so we run a council model, and so what that means is that we have a small council too, so we pick 4 people, designers and developers. We like to have a mix, and they are the people who effectively define the pathways of the system, and they specifically say like, okay, like as a requirement to get onto our council, you have to give up X amount of time per week to actually work on the system too. So what this means is, and I suppose what's maybe more unique about us, is that we don't have a specific design system team. Like there's not really any full-time team of people. Like even me, I'm still working on projects, which I think is actually a good thing because it can kind of help you like avoid burnout from monotony and things like that. But the other thing that we do, especially to focus on that, is we tend to rotate people on and off the council. So maybe if someone's had enough, then yeah, we'll rotate them back onto working on products. And I think that that's really good. It means that everyone who's on our council has experience with the products. I think it's very easy to be disconnected because everything has got to be product driven, right? Like I think that as soon as you start saying like design system first and like, oh, we're just focusing on design system and you forget about the products, it's a really easy thing to do as well. So yeah, on uniqueness, I think that we've really nailed that front down, and our council's been going strong for like 3 years now, so it's been working for us.
For sure. And we'll end with you, Annalisa, for this question. I know that you all have sort of combined multiple approaches to create something that works uniquely for you all.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we started on creating our web components first, and then obviously we had a need to create mobile applications. So we needed a mobile design system. So in theory, we needed 2 separate design systems, somewhat related, but obviously completely separate. So we run one as a centralized approach because it supports 9 different products. It's our web application, and we run that one, 2-week sprints. We even actually track velocity for our UX designers. They typically run at least 2 sprints prior to what engineering is creating, so that they're running ahead. And we even track velocity, and we have those running in parallel. As for our mobile teams, we use a little bit more of a federated approach where we have 2 mobile teams that need components. We've connected them. We're kind of the glue in the middle where we bring those 2 teams together. We talk about the requirements and what's needed. We have our one BA who's dedicated to the design system help write the stories, and then those respective product teams actually go out and start to build those components. They submit back into a shared repo, and our UX designers do UX QA on that. So that's sort of how our centralized approach, our federated approach works, as opposed to more of a centralized approach, and it seems to be working really well.
Amazing. I want to transition a little bit to some of the questions that we have had in chat. And if you have not asked your questions of the panel there, please feel free to keep them rolling in. We have tons of really great ones. But we'll start with Amir's question, which is, when it comes to adoption, what are some of the best practices for design systems teams? How do you get everybody on board? Anybody have an initial stab at that one? How do we get everybody on board when it comes to design system governance?
I can take it, Nef. About adoption, we did something. I don't know if it's the right solution, but at least it's a solution for us. We really highlighted the compliance of the design system inside the feature teams, and we tried to gamify it. So this way, we arrived to make it more fun to be compliant and then use the design system. That's really a major point. Second point is really about communication. Each time we have a slot to talk about the design system, we take it and you need to communicate, repeat, always. And don't hesitate to for instance, new joiners in the company. Each new joiners, we are approaching them with an onboarding pack, globally in the company. And so we, the design system team, put ourselves in the pack to, as soon as people, when they join the company, they know what is the design system, how it works, what are our tools, who we are. And so it's really foster a good adoption inside the team.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I would imagine that it is uniquely helpful to get new joiners the minute that they come in, so that they aren't developing any habits outside of the design system and immediately sort of turning them into evangelists. We have a question over here from Cami, which I think is for Henry. How do you recruit folks to be a part of the design system council? Do you ever find that it's hard to get people who want to help?
So far, no. So, I mean, to understand a little bit about our setup in the team quickly. So we have a team of designers, and I think in consulting they call it like an elevator team, which is basically when you all sit together, but you're all working on different projects around. So it's like centralized, but you also go and work directly with product teams. So that means that, and I'm in that team as well. So that means that we have a great connection in the team, and everything is fairly sort of like centric around our design system. I'm just talking about designers for the start. So from that, it's not too bad because everyone knows and everyone likes and uses the design system daily. And so it's really the case that like if they want to have, I don't know, maybe learn about design systems or have like the challenge of working on one, then they do. And so far, maybe we've been lucky. Maybe I'm being naive, but I think it's like kind of a desirable thing to work on, you know, because you can come off regular projects, introduce like this whole new field into your work. For developers, it's been a little bit easier because we work directly with like a web architecture team, like our design system's web-based. So those guys are kind of like easy picking, I'll say, because it's their job.
For sure. It's interesting that it seems like adoption and governance are really interlinked, and people want to be a part of the council that governs the design system because they've already adopted it. They see the value, they see the benefits. So I suppose, sort of like thinking about the benefits of a design system, we had another question over in chat. How do you all sort of evangelize the benefits of the design system, not just to design system consumers, but also up the chain to leadership and folks that you might rely on for resources? Annalisa, I might start with you because it seems like that's been something that you all have been able to do quite well so far.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would say start with the vision. You know, when I first joined Eptura, and it was, you know, I would say three mergers ago. And I'm sure this is a story that many of you can probably tell. You know, the great news is that the vision will never change regardless of how many companies you switch together. So in other words, you know, your message and your communication up the chain should be consistent. What I've done in the past is actually work directly with my senior leaders. I found partners across the aisle, so specifically with engineering and product, and I found people who are also very passionate about, you know, solving the same problem. So I had another VP of engineering who was like, "We need to build this design system." It's like, yes, let's do it. And how do we partner together and take our powers and, you know, do good with it? And we've created sort of, you know, the deck, you know, the deck that I think everybody here should have probably created before, and you've used it 90 million times, and you go out and you tell everyone about it. And I know it sounds really simple, but in order to enact change, you have to say the same thing over and over and over again until all of us are saying the same thing at the same time. So I put together this deck. You know, you talk about the value proposition, and then you make sure that it gets heard all the way up to the highest tier that you can possibly reach. For me, in that case, was my C-suite. I put together, sort of a vision deck and said, this is what we need, this is what you get, and this is what it will take. And then you put together a kind of a high-level timeline of what you think that will be, and then you pad it, right? Because things always take longer than what it's supposed to be. And then you start off sort of asking for more than what you think you need, and then hoping that you'll get somewhere here, and then you work with what you got, and you continue to show value as you progress. You put together all of the governance stuff that you need to, you document it, you show them all of the quantitative information that shows the value of what you're building, and then you do it all over again. You rinse and repeat. You go back to leadership and say, I know we're doing budget again. This is what we need in order to make sure that we continue to feed and nurture this wonderful design system that we've created. And then over time, you'll see how that thing starts to begin to grow.
Totally.
Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting. But something I want to add on there is tailor your information for the right audience. Like, I can tell you the majority of the people in the C-suite really don't care about how great the button is that you've designed. But what they will care about is oh, we're going to save this much time. Oh, we're going to have client consistency and things like that, So really do, and I mean, it sounds like Annalisa has, but really do tailor your content to the right people.
And there is a complimentary question that Jelena just asked over in the chat, is what's the best way to show that value? So assuming you have taken Henry's advice and you're not talking necessarily about the greatness of the button, but instead sort of talking about time efficiency and making developers and designers more efficient and shipping products faster and all of those things, how do you actually prove that? Is it that you look at Figma component usage? Are you looking at something else? Henry, maybe I'll start with you if you have had success in order, in terms of actually being able to show that the design system has lived up to that promise.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. Something for us that's an extra challenge is that we're in a bank. So anytime that we try and give numbers, they're scrutinized beyond belief, in fact. So I think we've kind of stopped actually trying to give off statistics. And I'm not really sure whether Figma component usage is super useful. Maybe if you're looking at year-on-year usage and you're trying to target teams, maybe that can be useful if you want to show growth. But the targets that we've gone for are more to give an example, we built a date picker component fairly recently, in the last couple of years. And the specific statistics we're looking on there is, how many projects have now used this? That's a really valuable one. What is actually the adoption of this new component that we have? And how many other date pickers are now not being used? That's a client experience one. Mainly for us, I think at our stage, our design system has been going for 9 years now. So mainly it's more about delivery for us. So I think showing that you have a roadmap, it's a realistic roadmap, and communicating clearly about what you're delivering, that's a lot more important for us at this stage. So we use the same tool that basically every product roadmap's in. So our stuff is directly there. So if one of our top C-suite people wants to have a look, they can, and they do sometimes. And we also communicate a lot on what we've delivered and how it matches up to the roadmap and things like that. And I think just by doing that and showing that you are delivering is probably the single most important thing that you can do.
And then as the design system requires more resources, whether that is you want to purchase a new tool or platform, or perhaps in Jérôme's case, you want to scale the team, do you find that that same sort of approach of thinking through the vision and also sort of talking through the roadmap is enough? Or how do you get an increase in resources? Catherine, we haven't spoken to you in a while. I'm not sure if you have experience sort of asking for more resources, but if so, how have you navigated those conversations with senior leadership?
Yeah, on our side, and it's really specific to Doctolib, this company is really, you need to bring data on the table. if you want to have more resources, or even bring any topic. Basically, even if you want to prioritize a topic that has not been flagged, then just bring data, and if you have this data proving, then it can really help you have time, bandwidth, developer bandwidth, whatever. That's why we decided on the design system side to really track really early the adoption of our component and the usage of our component. And for that, we provided some tools. It's not really answering to your question, Nef. I will come back to that. But we are providing some tools, developing plugins for designers, for instance, developing Chrome extensions for the developers. With this thing, we can gather some data, and with this data, it's always more easy to have what you want, honestly. And this is always the way we proceed. Second point, and I already mentioned, find ambassadors. Always find ambassadors within the team, and for that, you need to be in support as design system team. So if someone has a request, be there in support to help. Find some time to find some specific slots to dedicate time for those people, and this is how you arrive to, I would say, generate more interest around the design system, and then get what you want, basically.
Totally. And Catherine, did you have anything to add there?
Maybe, yeah, I think on the ambassadors idea, it's really, I mean, not being the only one saying, like, advocating for the design system, like actually having people who can sell it for you. So, you know, if you, so this is why I think when we moved to the new version of the design system, the first thing we gathered was were feedbacks, not numbers, but really like raw feedbacks and quotes of people using the design system and saying how much better it is. So yeah, this is what I wanted to add.
Yeah, totally. And I think that also goes a little bit with what Annalisa put in chat in terms of not necessarily just showcasing usage, but also thinking about case studies and being able to tell a story about how designers and developers were working prior to the design system and how that has gotten exponentially better after the design system itself has launched. We had a question from Recio a little bit about how you deal with client requests that might not actually be something that the design system supports. So somebody coming in and saying, hey, I want you to add this, and it not being within your purview. How do you all handle that? Henry, from your face, I'm going to imagine that you have dealt with this a couple times before. So we'll start there.
Yeah, I've definitely dealt with this one. My forward advice is to be really transparent and communicate upfront. There are a couple of reasons not to work on something. Number one is just pure capacity. Like, yeah, sorry, it's a good idea, but we're not going to prioritize it because we don't have enough time. If that's the case, tell them immediately. And this is a great gateway to open up, to say to people, oh, but if you want to contribute it yourself, why not work with us? And that's worked a couple of times really nicely with us. So when people come to you from outside, like, get your hooks into them by doing that. Now, the second reason that you might not want to adopt it is because you've got an existing solution. Just give them the existing solution. There's nothing more to it. And the third reason, which is probably the rarest, which is that it's just a bad idea and that you don't think it will work well on your platform, just tell them that. But try and give them a solution as well, you know. I don't think that's actually ever happened to me now I say it. If I ever told someone I think they got a bad idea, maybe. But yeah, I think just really upfront and clear communication, and be aware of the tactics that you can use around people asking for stuff, because some people really ask for a lot, and as soon as it's like, oh, but do you want to build it? They don't ask for anything. Or they build it for you, which is great. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I love that as an approach. Jérôme, I'll kick it over to you.
Yep, and I fully agree with what Henry said. And I just would add something, is that the design system is not working like, I think the time cycle of a design system is quite different from a product. I regularly have some feature teams coming to me saying, oh, I need this component or this modification of a component, but the sprint is starting like in 3 days, but it's not working like that. Updating a component, it takes time. We need to evaluate impacts on other products. We need to evaluate consistency with other products also. And this thing is really hard to explain to feature teams or to the requesters. So I fully agree with Henry about contributing and pushing for people to contribute to the design system and offering your support. So we have this kind of solution, and I saw that in the questions. For instance, we are providing to anyone open hours. So on our side, we have one developer, one designer of the design system team available every day. There's a slot you can book on your calendar. Anyone can join, and we are here to help and to do some pair sessions together. And this is only what we can offer, and this is how we address this kind of specific request. Usually, when it's for next week, you know that it's kind of an exotic request, and usually they need to do something on their own, but it's not a good best practice. But we can have alternatives. But really trying to always be in support to keep them as, I would say, as friends, because they need to be there to help you if you need, and the more they're using the design system, it will benefit to everyone.
Do you mind if I add one other thing as well? I was just going to say, in terms of trying to get ahead, and I think that Jérôme had a really great point. It's like the sprint's going to start in 3 days. I need this new component, right? What we've established in our groups is we have designers embedded inside the design system, as well as our product designers that know exactly what's happening. And so we've gotten sort of participation and contribution. We created a contribution sandbox within our design system. So anytime a designer is working with their PMs, they're talking through the epics, they know what requirements are happening, right? They're like running far ahead, and they know that they're going to eventually need component X. Once they get approval from that PM, they should go then and make sure that that component is something that's available in our design system. And if the answer is no, they go to the contribution sandbox, they drop it in. Maybe they say, I need to change this component to be this, or I need to add it. We drop it into the contribution sandbox. The designers within the design system then reviews it, talks through it, talks to that designer, and then adds it to the upcoming sprint, and it communicates back to that designer through Figma comments saying, we've slated this to come out or to start in this sprint, so you can anticipate, delivery date of X. Let me know if you have any questions. And so if you get that sort of async communication going on, but you create a medium for those folks to start communicating with each other, it helps streamline that process as well.
Maybe one last thing I wanted to add. So for us, a lot of requests are actually more questions, and this is where we created a Teams channel with like a lot of sub channels, just so whenever there's a question, you can rely on the whole community of designers and developers to answer your questions. And usually you see conversations there where like people say, oh yeah, we're missing that, and actually someone else answering and saying, oh, but we did it this way, maybe you can try it. And just kind of the questions answering themselves, and not always relying just on the core team to answer all of that.
Totally. And I think implicit in some of the requests that we're talking about is also the risk that perhaps people, when they don't get their way, might deviate from the design system in some way. And Juliana has an excellent question. She says, "How do you ensure the correct usage by designers and minimize the occurrence of defects? And additionally, how do you manage deviations from the system, such as the customization of components?" Annalisa, maybe we'll start with you.
That to be able to feel like we put our own mark. And oftentimes a lot of folks would argue that, design systems may hinder innovation, but in my eyes, it actually helps enable it and accelerate it so that we can think about how to solve the actual problems of our customers, right? Like, because at the end of the day, it's not about us making artistic, beautiful things. It's about us actually solving problems. So when you start to communicate the value of a design system, which is to help, solve those actual problems, it allows for some of these, rogue designers who just want to make something that looks cool or looks fancy, um, understand why it's important for them to be a unified front, right? Let's look and feel as if we're one designer. Even if you have 20 or 30 or 50 designers, we all should look and feel as if we're creating the same thing, and give them examples such as, experiences that they enjoy using Airbnb, Apple products. When you engage with those things, you don't feel like 20 million different designers actually created it. You feel as though it's one experience. So if you're able to get that sort of communicated to your design team and promote that, it allows for those rogue designers to start to want to leverage the design system and even make contributions, right? That's the purpose of that sandbox, is say, I don't want to stop you from coming up with great ideas, but if we created one sort of thing, one component that we all should use, let's try to focus on doing that. And if we're missing something, come back to us and contribute. And that's the ability, that's sort of your opportunity to be able to make something innovative and creative and amazing.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think it sort of goes back to some other folks. I think it was Henry sort of saying, "Hey, if you need something, come contribute, come join us, come be a part of us." There have been a couple of questions over in the chat about how you all approach training and education. Allison wants to know a little bit about just your philosophy and how you think about it. And then I'll also couple that with Allison's earlier question, where she was saying that she's sort of at the beginning of her design system rollout, and designers aren't necessarily telling her where they need demos, where they need training, and where they might be a bit confused about how to use the design system. So how do you all do that and make sure that everybody has the appropriate education that they need to adopt and perhaps even contribute to the design system? Um, Henry, maybe I'll start with you. I'm not sure if the council has an opinion on this.
I think there are different answers for different stages of your design system. So early on, I think what I would look to do is to give as many live demos and as many training sessions, and literally just go and track down people and sit with them, like look at their problems, look at their designs, look at what they've got, etc., etc. And I mean, most design systems have either a pilot program or pilot components, right? So when you've got that first step and you've got your pilot phase, you should be in direct contact and communication with that team as you go. As you get a bit more mature, to give an answer from sort of like way further down the lines, you got to focus on documentation and documentation feedback loops. So with our documentation, we're commonly asking people, like when we get a question, we have a Teams chat as well that's not answered by our documentation. Put that in your documentation, like feedback from the questions you get back into your doc. And so that should answer a lot of questions. Then for us, whenever a new designer joins our design team, because you've got to bear in mind, like most of our council designers is directly in the design team, we'll commonly have like one-to-one sessions to get them up to speed and to show them things. Then on top of that, we've now made videos, we've made like guides, there are old presentations that you can watch. if you're motivated to learn about the design system, there's like a ton of content that we've produced over the years. But yeah, and then more specifically, like you should be learning from the design team around you, because it's not just like the experts in the design system. You should be aiming for the whole team to know it quite well, you know. So anyone in the design team should be able to spread it. On the dev side, to quickly answer that, we've got dev guides. It's a little bit more straightforward, I think, for front-end developers because they can just download all of our assets and they've got the code snippets, you know, and they're using it directly. So I think it's maybe a little bit more straightforward. But also for them, we've made videos and things like that, which they can watch and they can ask us questions. So yeah, it's a focus on communication. It's a focus on like building up assets as well. But at the very start, I would recommend like getting as dirty as you can and really using a lot of your capacity to like train people up.
Jérôme?
Yes, I would say that I'm in between those two phases. Like we did lots of training sessions with people, I mean, one-on-one sessions, stuff like that. And our documentation is not yet really well refined or complete. And solution we found, and it also answers another issue, the issue of the skill levels of your designer, for instance. You have some designers really mastering Figma, really mastering the design system, and some not. And the solution is to flag the experts in your design system, product designer using your design system, flag the experts and try to push them, train others, and doing some pair sessions. And it's a collaborative, it's a mindset among product designers to do pair sessions and try and collaborate. And if you arrive to find the good person that are really the design system experts, just because they really like to use all your components, test the properties, give you feedback, stuff like that, push them to work with more junior designers or designers that are less at ease with the design system. That's also a good way to spread the word, I would say.
And then Catherine?
Yeah, on our side, one thing we identified in early user research is that we have a lot of different, as Jérôme said, a lot of different levels of designers, and so we also try to address that, especially in the way we organize our documentation on our platform. So we actually split it in two parts. So there is one a little bit more, let's say, in-depth learn section where you can still reference it if you need it, but this is where, you know, everything is explained. And then there's a build section. So, you know, I know what I'm doing. I just go there, tell me what I need to do. And that's, so this way we don't have like extensive documentation everywhere. The other thing is, I think, yeah, we're still at this stage of having a lot of one-on-one training, and also so like the onboarding of the design system is part of the general onboarding of designers. So this helps as well. It also helps to address questions very early, and to assess the level of the designers and the knowledge of design systems in general.
Makes sense. I think we have time for just one more question, and I know that there are quite a few that are left unanswered. So before I ask that final question, I want to throw everybody's attention one more time to the link to sign up for Zeros. So if you have a question that is absolutely pressing and you didn't get an opportunity to have that answered, please post it there. It gives us unlimited time to be able to talk about it, and for you to get perspectives, not only for our panelists who are a part of that community, but also from fellow folks in the audience and maybe people who didn't even join this webinar who might have really amazing things to say and to recommend. So the final question as we sort of wrap things up is, what's one piece of advice that you can give our audience for specifically folks who are struggling with design system governance? Jérôme, we'll start with you.
So I would say gather as soon as possible some data to get the top management buy-in. This is a key thing when you're starting. And as I mentioned, find ambassadors everywhere. As soon as you have ambassadors, you have to incentive them, to push them to participate, to feel them like being a part of the design system. And because your team will always be too small. So ambassadors is the key.
That makes a lot of sense. And Annalisa, I think you have a similar piece of advice.
And making sure that you get executive buy-in. But what I would also say, and that I've seen actually happen in a lot of the organizations that I've worked in before, is don't get discouraged. I feel like enthusiasm is contagious. Your attitude is contagious, and so oftentimes when you're feeling like this isn't working or like I should just stop doing what I'm doing, don't give up. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And it takes a long time to build a design system correctly. You think about the life cycle of a product. This is exactly the same thing. It takes a number of months, and make sure you get those things off the ground correctly. So just continue to push forward. And also, I would say, in terms of just like a staffing perspective, if you're able to get dedicated designers, I'd honestly, what we've done successfully is overstaff our design system with designers so that they can run much farther ahead and get a lot of the base things and foundational things done first, and staff it with a researcher as well as content strategist if you can. If not, steal some of that bandwidth and make sure you apply it to your design system, because that's your sort of single source of truth.
And Henry, your piece of advice?
I feel like I'm going to give a couple, if that's okay. The first one is not following the crowd. It's really easy to go and read articles or hear us talking about our setups and be like, yeah, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Do what's right for you on that one, like find what works in your organization, because it's all really personal. Like you've heard all of us talk about our pretty successful setups, and they're all like completely different to each other. So, it's what works for you. Then it's over to managing expectations and energy. And what I mean by that is, first of all, manage your expectations, manage everyone else's expectations as much as you can, by road mapping, by being realistic. And then managing energy is more sort of like personal for you as a maintainer. If you're going crazy, like with, I think office hours, I'm going to use office hours as an example because it's easy to go like into a deep hole of office hours. Manage your energy and focus on value. Like think about what the most valuable thing is at that moment and just directly focus on that. And focus on value like as a more broad sense, like think about what is the most valuable thing and just do it. I think you can be really brutal when it comes to actually thinking about value. Like when you're getting started and there's that sort of initial want to design a button, don't design a button, design like your map component or your date picker or some like really meaty, complex component which takes everyone ages to implement. Design it and make it really easy to use, and then people will actually use it, So focus on the value. So there's like 3 or 4 bits of advice in there, sorry.
No, we'll take it. 3 for the price of 1. And Catherine, do you want to round us out?
Yeah, for me, it will be don't wait years before you address your governance, because it has been painful for us to untangle years of not having clear things in place. So yeah, like as you scale, just address it bit by bit and not all at once.
I think that was fantastic advice to end us. Thank you everybody so much for joining. Remember, we have a couple of webinars coming up if you have not yet gotten your fix completely from listening to design system goodness. I also will do just one more plug. We have our How We Document report coming out where we surveyed over 300 design system practitioners to find out what tools people are using, how happy they are about their design systems, and everything in between. If you want to be notified about that, there is a spot there for you to put in your details, and we will make sure that you are one of the first to see the results of the How We Document survey. Thank you all so much for joining, and a special thank you to our panelists for sharing your insights, advice, and ideas about how we all can approach our design systems. Hope everyone has a fantastic day, and looking forward to seeing you all next time.